Democracy. You hear that word thrown around all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? It sounds super simple, but when you really start to dig in, you find out it's pretty complicated. So let's do this. Let's figure out what democracy really is together. So let's just ask the big question right up front. What is democracy? We're going to build a definition from the ground up, piece by piece, by looking at some real-world examples that really challenge our assumptions. Think of it like a detective story, you know? We're on the hunt for clues to uncover the true identity of democracy.
And this image, it just says so much, doesn't it? It really gets at this central problem. The idea of democracy is often treated like, I don't know, a fast food product you can just export anywhere, a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. But this picture, it kind of hints that the meaning can get twisted or maybe misunderstood, depending on who's delivering it and how.
And that's exactly why we have this definition dilemma. We have to have a clear definition, because so many governments out there call themselves a democracy, even when, well, they're really not. So how do we tell the real deal from the fakes? Now, a great place to start is with this incredible, famous quote from Abraham Lincoln, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people." It's so inspiring, it's powerful, it gives you goosebumps. But as a practical working definition, it's a little vague. We need something a bit more solid to really sink our teeth into. So let's try a more straightforward definition, something that seems simple and useful on the surface. We'll use this as our starting point, and then we're going to put it to the test and see where it starts to fall apart. Okay, here we go. Democracy is a form of government where the rulers are elected by the people. This seems pretty good, right? It lets us draw a clear line between democracies and, say, monarchies, where rulers inherit power, or military dictatorships like Pinochet's Chile, where they just seize it. It feels like a solid first step. But is that really enough? I mean, if a country holds an election, any kind of election, does that automatically make it a democracy? This right here is where our investigation really kicks off. Because as we're about to see, the answer is a big, fat no. All right, let's look at our first set of clues. We're going to examine a few countries that hold elections, but really make us question our simple definition by asking two things. Who really has the power, and do voters actually have a genuine choice? This cartoon just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? You can have the symbol of democracy, the ballot box, but it's totally meaningless if someone else is behind the scenes pulling all the strings. And that brings us to our first case study, Pakistan under General Pervez Musharraf. So get this. In 1999, General Musharraf leads a military coup and throws out a democratically elected government. A few years later, he holds elections. And sure, there were elected representatives, but, and this is the absolute key, he issued an order that basically gave himself the power to dismiss them. And the folks who were elected were supervised by a National Security Council that was totally dominated by the military. So who really had the final say? Yeah, not the people's representatives. And just like that, we've uncovered our first essential feature of a real democracy. It's not enough to just hold elections. The people who actually win those elections have to have the final, ultimate decision-making power. If they don't, the election is just for show. Okay, let's look at two more cases that show us another big problem. Take China. They hold elections, but every single candidate has to be approved by the Communist Party. That's not a real choice. Or think about Mexico, where for more than 70 years, one single party, the PRI, always won, a lot of the time by using dirty tricks. People could vote, but in reality, there was no way for the ruling party to ever get defeated. So here's the crucial point. An election has to offer a real, genuine choice between different parties and candidates. And just as important, the people currently in power have to have a fair chance of losing. If the outcome is already decided, it's not a democratic election. And that's our second feature. Okay, so we need elected leaders with real power, and we need free and fair elections. We're done, right? Well, not so fast. What about the voters themselves? Let's widen our definition now to include the ideas of equality and the fundamental rights of every single citizen. I mean, just think about these examples for a second. For decades, women in Saudi Arabia couldn't vote at all. In Estonia, the citizenship rules are set up in a way that makes it really tough for the Russian-speaking minority to even cast a ballot. And in Fiji, the whole system is designed so an indigenous citizen's vote is literally worth more than an Indian Fijian's vote. These are just not systems based on equality. And this leads us to our third, absolutely fundamental feature. It's based on a simple but incredibly powerful idea. In a true democracy, every adult citizen has to have one vote, and every single vote has to have the exact same value. One person, one vote, one value.
It's as simple as that. And for our last case study, let's look at Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe. Now, his party, ZANU-PF, was genuinely popular. They led the independence struggle, and they won elections all the time. But over the years, they kept changing the constitution to give themselves more power. They harassed the opposition, they controlled the media, and they flat out ignored court rulings they didn't like. The government just wasn't playing by the rules. And this brings us to our fourth and final feature. A democratic government isn't just free to do whatever it wants, even if it won an election. It has to respect the basic rights of its citizens, freedom of speech, freedom to protest, and it has to operate within the limits set by the Constitution. Bottom line, nobody is above the law. Okay, we've gathered all our clues. We started with a really simple idea, we tested it against reality, and we've uncovered 4 essential features. So now, let's put them all together and build our complete, super strong definition of democracy.
Here they are, the 4 pillars of a democracy. First, the elected reps have the real final decision-making power. Second, the elections are free and fair, with a real chance for the people in charge to lose. Third, every adult gets 1 vote, and every vote is equal. And fourth, the government has to respect citizens' rights and the rule of law. And this, right here, is the most important takeaway of all. These 4 features, they're not a menu where you can just pick and choose what you like. A country has to meet all 4 of these conditions to be considered a true democracy. If it's missing even one, it just doesn't make the cut. So we've built our definition of a democratic government. But does the idea have to stop there? Could we apply these same principles to other parts of our lives? I mean, what would a democratic classroom look like? Or a democratic family? Now that's some food for thought. Thanks for joining me on This Explainer.